Hello, everyone, and welcome along to the latest edition of Betting Weekly Game Bet Match, the tennis betting podcast brought to you in association with Bet Rivers, your hometown sportsbook. It's quarterfinal day in the US Open in a sweltering New York. I'm delighted to say, joining me from his apartment in Flushing, just down the corner from the tennis centre, the Beijing Tennis Centre, is our senior ATP Tour handicapper, Sean Calvert. Good morning to Sean. A couple of days when I spoke to you. How are you?
Morning, yes. 10 o'clock here in the morning. It's all right. I'd like to complain about things, as you know, but this hotel room, as kind of budget as it is the aircon's great. It never gets above about sort of 19 degrees. I think it's set to 70 Fahrenheit in here. It's great. It's like a cool oasis. Whereas outside there, it's pretty boiling hot.
The only thing I would say is you're like a ventriloquist. You've done that whole piece without your lips moving. So the internet might not be that great, but
the internet is really bad. I didn't want to start this video moaning about stuff, but yeah, the internet's not great. So apologies if the audio and video doesn't match, but it's the best I can do, unfortunately.
No problem at all. Let's talk about the weather conditions. You're obviously out. You're jetting back this evening or this afternoon sometime?
Later on this evening, yeah. So I've got a sort of day. Well, I've got to check out here, and then I've got a day to sort of maybe wander. I might just pop into Manhattan, do a couple of things that I need to do, and then pop back to the airport. And it's a sort of it's the night flight, so it's an overnight flight. So I should be back in the UK tomorrow morning.
And obviously, the weather conditions now are getting hotter and hotter. It was hot when I was out there last week. The conditions in the next 2 or 3 days are going to be sweltering. Today, hot conditions.
Yeah, even hotter actually. Yesterday it wasn't as hot as I thought it was going to be in terms of the sun because there was a lot of cloud cover. It was very, very humid. And it was the humidity that was the problem yesterday. But in the next 3 days, today, excuse me, tomorrow, the day after, it's going to be 34 every day, and it's not going to cool down until Friday. It's still going to be 30 on Friday, but the next 3 days are going to be pretty brutal. But I think it's interesting with the roof. I don't know what they've said, but the roof was closed all day yesterday on both courts. I'm not entirely sure why, because there was a little bit of rain, but it was only a little bit. It was a tiny bit, and it was forecast to be a tiny bit. So their rules say that the roof should not be closed in the event of heat. It should only be closed if there's rain, and there was no rain at all from about sort of 3 o'clock yesterday. So I'm not entirely sure why the roofs were all closed. I mean, it can only be to protect them from the heat, which is against their own rules.
Yeah, I mean, I've Googled the rules when you were there, and it says the only reason they can do it is because of in anticipation of inclement weather. So,
yeah,
you was on Armstrong Court. It was sweltering in there when the roof's on.
Yeah, there's no breeze in there at all. It's fully enclosed. There is sort of window slats on the side, but unless there's a pretty strong sort of wind breeze coming through there's just no air at all. They've got some fans. They've got some pretty big fans right at the top, but it doesn't really do anything. I mean, I don't sweat much anyway, but I would imagine that people that do would be people around me that were sweating. There's a lot of people. You can tell it's because people were sort of wafting themselves with fans and caps and anything else that they could find that would create a breeze. There's just no air in there at all. It's kind of sticky and sort of humid environment.
Ashes was cooler. I was in Ash with the roof on, and it was quite cool. And then they opened it after 10 minutes.
Yeah, I've not been there with the roof on. It's much bigger
cool
there, isn't it? It's much bigger.
Much you had to wear a top.
I just don't know why they had the roof on last night or yesterday afternoon. I think it must be just to protect the players, but that's against their own rules. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
How's the trip been? You enjoyed yourself? Had a nice time? A lot of stuff. A lot of good tennis. Good nights out.
I wouldn't say a lot of good nights out. Anyone that's been to Flushing, I don't think they would drive it as a sort of party central place. It's basically sort of Chinatown area of well, certainly of Queens. There's some nice hotel bars. The one that I went to on the rooftop bar of the Hyatt a hotel that I went to the other night, that was really, really nice. You can see the planes going over just right above your head. It was kind of felt like, and decent view, but you wouldn't call it party central, that's for sure.
Well, you wouldn't catch me in anything like that. Just be, but anyway,
My trips and your trips are very different sometimes.
It was the one thing about it though. It's busy there, isn't it? I mean, the amount of people there, and it's get busier than when I went there last year, and it's even busier than last year.
Yeah, I think they said record crowds this year. I was kind of expecting it, to be honest. As you know, I'm not a massive fan of it when it's really busy, but I don't necessarily mind during a Grand Slam. I kind of expect it to be busy. It doesn't annoy me as much in New York as it would in other places for whatever reason. Yeah, I mean, it's way busier than when I was here in 2008. It's 15 years ago. Everything's different. Everything's kind of bigger about the site. It's the same size, the site, but it's all changed, doesn't it? In the old days, Armstrong and Grandstand were next to each other, and you could look over from Armstrong and look over onto Grandstand if you preferred the match that was going on there. But it's totally changed now. Grandstand's right over the other side. The new Grandstand that they built is over the other side. All the courts have got much bigger stands now than they did. I mean, I'm going back 15 years, but they didn't have that much seating. Some of the outside courts now they're all built up, and there's tons more stuff there than there was before. It's I wouldn't say it was unrecognizable, but it's very from the past.
Yep. Let's move on to the betting. That's what we're here for. Give you some picks. It's the quarterfinal day on the men's singles. Now, this is quite difficult for us to do because we're filming this from the UK. So this evening, we have two matches on the quarterfinals. We're going to talk about them briefly, and we're going to talk about the outright market. But obviously, we have two matches tomorrow, which we can go into more depth analysis on and give you some picks on there. So depending if this should go up, which gives us a lot of time, you'll have some time to place your bets on the 1:30 Eastern time match, which is Taylor Fritz against Novak Djokovic. Then 8:15 p.m. Eastern time, you have Frances Tiafoe and Ben Shelton. And then tomorrow we got Alcaraz, Zverev, and the all-Russian affair between Daniil, Medvedev, and Andrey Rublev. So that's how we're going to do it. But before we do that, let's have a look at the outright market. And we've still got our pick through to the quarterfinals. Alexander Zverev, our 40-1 pick, is now half the price of that. But he comes through a tough match, a long match against Jannik Sinner. Sinner again was injured into the match. How's Zverev going to recover from that for tomorrow to play Alcaraz? We'll probably answer that question when we speak about that match in a minute. Novak Djokovic is the favourite at even money. He's had some scares along the way. Laslo Djere obviously taken a 2-set-to-love lead against him. Hasn't looked brilliant, but he's an even money favourite. Carlos Alcaraz is plus 175. Also someone who's hasn't looked at his best. Medvedev, I've been quite impressed with Medvedev. He's 11-1. Zverev, our man, I think he's been looked good as well, but he did have scares early doors. He's 20-1. Frances Tiafoe, 33, is leading the American team. Andrey Rublev, 33. Taylor Fritz is 40. And Ben Shelton, 90-1. Anything you want to talk about on the outright market? I mean, it's pretty hard to find some value there, isn't it? When you got through to the quarterfinals of a major, you've still got Djokovic and Alcaraz. You can tell that the organisers want that to be their final. That's what they really want to see happen here. It looks like it's going to happen. I think, Zverev's match, we wanted him to win quite easy, but to play Alcaraz after a 4-hour, 40-minute marathon isn't ideal, is it?
No, I think we've kind of done more or less as well as we could in terms of the value. It's very difficult, isn't it? You're going to just put a massive amount on Djokovic or Alcaraz, or bet the Djokovic Alcaraz final if that was an option, which I think it probably was. Unless you're going to do that, you're trying to find the viable alternatives, which for me at the start was Zverev, and he is through to the quarterfinals. If it's difficult to find it, isn't it? In major, it's unless you're going to go against the hot pots, Djokovic and Alcaraz, it's difficult. And we are hopeful on Zverev. We'll come on to that later. Statistically, he's got a reasonable chance, but obviously the 4-hour 4-1 match last night didn't really help matters, did it? But the weather could still play a part in this. Even the top guys could struggle because it's going to be super, super hot over the next few days. So if the weather intervenes, it is looking a bit like Djokovic Alcaraz, isn't it?
Yeah, you would think so, but they haven't been. There is signs for encouragement for taking him on. And Novak Djokovic, that Laslo Djere, the first 2 sets there, Alcaraz hasn't to me looked the best form he's been in, and I think Medvedev's looked good. And 11-1, I quite like it. I still want to oppose this Alcaraz Djokovic final. Not for any other reason. I just think that, as you say, the conditions could take a little bit of its toll, and I also think the players aren't playing at the peak of what we've seen this season already. So we'll see. But we're in good shape. Alexander Zverev is there. He's through to the quarterfinals. He's beat Jannik Sinner. He's played a big match, but he's got to play Alcaraz. He's got to win the Grand Major. You've got to play the best. So he's going to have to do it tough. Alcaraz, Medvedev, and probably Djokovic standing his way, which is and Sinner as well. There's a very, very tough route. But let's hope, fingers crossed, Alexander Zverev can get back into winning ways and really push the Carlos Alcaraz. Got a good head record as well, so we'll come on to that in a minute. Let's have a look at today's match. 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Taylor Fritz, the number one American, up against Novak Djokovic. Novak Djokovic, tournament favourite, as we said there, is an overwhelming favourite here. He's minus 715 against Taylor Fritz, who's $5. The spread is 6.5, minus 115 for Djokovic, minus 109 for Fritz. The total games is 34.5, which potentially could look a little bit of value on the over 34.5 is minus 115. But when you look at the head-to-head, Sean, any sort of hopes you had of Fritz putting up a big, decent fighter just distinguished straight away. 7-0, Novak Djokovic leads Taylor Fritz. They met already this year in Cincinnati, and Djokovic won the first set 6-love, 6-4, and that was only like, what, 3 weeks ago now, 4 weeks ago now? But
a few weeks here.
Yeah, it's going to be very, very difficult for Taylor Fritz here to get anything from this match. I thought the scheduling, they wanted Tiafoe late, but I think Fritz's chance they needed to be late on in New York as well. The fact that it's 1:30 in the afternoon, I don't think it helps him.
I think it might if Djokovic struggles in the heat, which is possible. It is going to be pretty hot, very hot, in fact. So that could be a factor. I mean, I've certainly seen Fritz struggle in the heat as well, but on the day, you never really know who's going to handle the conditions the better. But yeah, as you say, that head-to-head record hugely in favor of Novak Djokovic, 7-0. Just breaking that down slightly in terms of the stats, the service points won and return points won totals on the matches they've played away from clay. I've taken clay out of the equation to give Fritz maybe a bit more of a chance, if you like, but still massively in favor of Djokovic. 109 to 91 in terms of the service points won, return points won totals. So, hugely in favor of Novak. Just breaking that down slightly further, Fritz has won only 44% of his second serve points in this matchup, and only 31% of return points. So he's done nothing against the Novak Djokovic serve, and Djokovic has had a relatively comfortable time, a fairly comfortable time actually against the Fritz serve, winning 40% of return points on the Fritz serve. Novak Djokovic, which is high indeed against a player who would kind of pride himself on his first serve. And Djokovic has won 10% more of the second serve points in this matchup as well. So he's been better from the baseline. He's had no real problems with the Fritz serve, and Fritz is doing nothing on the Djokovic serve. So on the bare matchup, on what's happened in the past, it's kind of difficult to make much of a case for Taylor Fritz. It's not as if he's got a particularly great record at this tournament. Until this year, he'd done very little at the US Open, and he hasn't really faced much of note this tournament either. He's got here by facing nobody in the top 70 in the world. I think for Vilas, who he played, the clay quarter is number 74. He's the highest ranked player that he's played. The other three were ranked between number 102 and number 206. So a very comfortable route for Taylor Fritz so far. But then, now he's coming up against Novak Djokovic. It's very difficult. Unless the heat plays a part in this, I'm not really seeing much of a chance for Fritz. Maybe the overs if Djokovic has a problem with the heat, but I'm not seeing this as a great betting contest, to be honest.
There are 63 different betting markets available, and all these men's quarterfinals available on the Bet Rivers website now. So head across there. You may find a market that you're interested in. For Sean, and he thinks it's one to avoid. And there's a lot of question marks about the weather and the question, the head-to-head that Fritz Custer overcome is so one-sided that it's really, really hard to find much value in it. But during in-play, you may find it. And Bet Rivers do have a US Open offer daily for the main draw. Get a 50% match bet up to $25 on a live wager each day of the US Open. So you're running out of days to get advantage of that one. But this one here is a watching brief for us. No bet from us at all, but Novak Djokovic should win, but Taylor Fritz has got to use that crowd. The crowd's got to be on his side, and they try to get ruffled Novak Djokovic's feathers, but it's a lot easier said than done. The next quarterfinal is 8:15 p.m. Eastern time. It's the night match, and it's the all-American affair between Frances Tiafoe, the great entertainer, huge following wherever he goes. The US Open, the fans were loving Frances Tiafoe. When I was there, they wanted the hottest ticket in town was the Tiafoe ticket. And he's up against big Ben Shelton, who's gaining some momentum as well with the supporters and the tennis fans stateside. Minus 275 for Frances Tiafoe. Ben Shelton is plus 220. The spread here is 4.5. Shelton receives the 4.5 start, minus 129. Tiafoe giving up 4.5 is minus 104. And the total here is 39.5. Again, there is 63 betting markets available on the Bet Rivers website. Their records come into this tournament are pretty similar. Frances Tiafoe had a great start to the year and it sort of panned out a little bit, but their recent records are very, very similar. And on this tournament, you would say that Shelton has probably been the more impressive. The win against Tommy Paul was very good. Karatsev win was very good. The win over Dominic Thiem was a bit fortunate with Thiem having to retire for sickness, but it's had a tough route, Shelton. He's come of age a little bit here, hasn't he? Is he going to be phased here? What you've seen about Shelton? I quite like what I've seen about Shelton, but I think Tiafoe, with that crowd behind him and the support he gets, has got another couple of levels to go into rather than young Ben Shelton at the moment.
Yeah, I think he's just slightly the more complete player at the minute. Frances Tiafoe, as you say, this will be a box office. Both men are real crowd favourites here and crowd pleasers, and this will be some energy out there tonight. Even in the heat and stuff, it's still going to be quite an incredible spectacle, I think. It's been a great turnaround, actually, for Ben Shelton after struggling to live up to his breakthrough at the Australian Open. He didn't really do anything at all until this US Open, really. Tiafoe's not been great this hard court summer either, but both of them have kind of come to New York and really thrived on the conditions and the energy here. If you take a look at the stats for this season on outdoor hard at main level, Tiafoe, he's got a decent advantage. You can see why he's priced as he is. 74% win rate on this surface this season at main level, and his service points won and return points won total is 106. Shelton, you can't really match that. 55% win rate and a total of 101. Both guys have won 69% of their service points, as you would expect, strong on serve. But Shelton's return game, it's not quite there yet. He's only won 31% of return points. It's not enough at this level. Tiafoe 37%, so quite some considerable advantage for Tiafoe on return of serve. I was at that Shelton Paul match the other day. Well, I was at it for a while until I got that allergy attack, and then I had to leave.
What was all that about? If you haven't followed Sean, you can follow him on Instagram at Because We Win. Sean had a problem there with his eyes. What was all that about?
As I said, I met a guy in Juicy Juice over the road here the day after.
No, but don't be telling. I met a guy in Juicy Juice.
Juice is just a smoothie shop.
Smoothies. This is getting even worse. You met a guy in a guy in a smoothie shop called Juicy Juice.
I met a guy in his. Yes, that's exactly correct. That's exactly correct.
Okay, right.
And we were talking about it because what happened was my eyes just started really stinging and really streaming and running. My nose was absolutely running. It was like it was some sort of allergic reaction. I just thought, I don't know what's going on here. So obviously it was so bad I couldn't really watch the tennis. So I had to leave. I had to go back to Flushing Main Street to find a pharmacy.
Juicy Juice.
No, Juicy Juice is later. Right. Find a pharmacy, get some antihistamines, which didn't do anything, by the way. Go back to the tennis. That was all in the middle of the Tommy Paul match. But the guy I spoke to, if it sounds better, Juicy Juice is part of Subway. So it was in the kind of annex of Subway. And he was saying he had the exact same problem, like a couple of miles away from where I was at the US Open. And the concierge of my hotel reckons this guy, he thinks it was all to do with the smoke coming down from the fires in Canada, which had come down and kind of hit the New York area, and it was kind of in the air. Some people had a reaction to it. Obviously, I was one of them. So I only saw the first, to cut a long story short, I only saw the first set of the Shelton Paul match, and then the very last knockings of it when I finally got back. But the point is, it's a very laboured point, but the point is that Tommy Paul was, it should have been 4-0 up in that opening set against Shelton. He had an easy forehand on break point to go 4-0, double break up, and Shelton was, the energy was gone with Shelton, and Paul would have been well on top. Missed his opportunity, missed another few opportunities. let Shelton right back into the game, and Shelton didn't let go of it from there. It was a disappointing performance from Tommy Paul. Not for the first time. And had Paul won that first set, I think he would have won that match probably 3-1, something like that. But he didn't. Shelton's took advantage. He's banging down these serves. I don't know whether you've seen the 149 mile an hour serves that he's been knocking down. That's, he's not going to do that very often. He's not going to be able to produce 149 miles an hour too often. But I just feel like it's not enough, with the stats on his return game. And the other massive factor to take into advantage that I haven't take into account that I haven't mentioned so far is the fact that Tiafoe got an unbelievable record against left-handers. He's won his last 19 matches in a row, Tiafoe, against left-handers. So he has no problem with this sort of matchup. That's an outstanding record against lefties. I think it all just points to Tiafoe winning the match. I mean, for me, I've taken a bet here. I've taken the view that Tiafoe is going to win it. Shelton will probably win a set. But I can't see Shelton winning more than one set. And in those situations, I do like to go for the 3-1 win. So I've taken 3-1 to Tiafoe. That was a 3.75 chance of Bet Rivers. Not sure what it's right now.
The price now is plus 255. So 3-1 to Tiafoe. You can obviously look at the total games here, which is 39.5. The over 3.5 sets is minus 186. Over 4.5 sets is plus 245. Yes, so if you go to the website, look at anything associated with a long match here, but we're going for Frances Tiafoe to be able to extend that record against left-handers, 19-0 against left-handers in the last 19 matches. Quite staggering, that really, when you think about it. That's a very impressive record. Ben Shelton is the real deal, but he's going to be a little bit off the pace here, we feel, against Frances Tiafoe, and that red hot atmosphere. It's going to be an unbelievable match. That starts 8:15 p.m. this evening on Tuesday Eastern time. So if you're watching this show, make sure you get your bets on nice and early on both of those quarterfinals. Obviously, Novak Djokovic starts this afternoon around about 1:30. And this one starts at 8:15. So early starts for both of them. So make sure you head to the Bet Rivers website early to get those bets on. Don't miss out. Two matches we do have, though, for Wednesday. Two quarterfinals, which we can speak now. You've got a bit of time to get your wages on here. And the first one involves our pick. It's our pick, obviously, Alexander Zverev, our 40-1 pick to win the tournament. He's up against Carlos Alcaraz, the number one seed. Carlos Alcaraz is minus 435 to win this match. Alexander Zverev is plus 340. We do know that Zverev has come through a long match against Jannik Sinner at 4 hours and 40 minutes. The spread here is 5.5. Zverev is plus 104. Receiving 5.5. Alcaraz giving up 5.5 on the spread is minus 127. And the total is 36.5. When I looked at that 36.5, I thought that was a little bit cheap, actually. Over minus 107, under minus 113. The head-to-head is encouraging for us. We lead 3-2, although the last match they had this year in Madrid, Alcaraz won 6-1, 6-2. And when you look at the head-to-head in a major, the last time they met was in the 2022 French Open quarterfinal, where Alcaraz was a heavy favourite, and Zverev won 6-4, 6-4, 4-6, 7-6. So the total games come in on a clay court there, which is traditionally slower, at 43. My first reaction is definitely down to that 36.5. I would have thought the line personally would be 38.5. I know that Sinner's had a long game. Zverev had a long game against Sinner, but he's serving well. He's going to cause problems, and he has caused Alcaraz problems before. And Alcaraz, I don't think, is playing at his best.
Yeah, I think the line is all about the fact that players are assuming that Zverev's going to have very little left in the tank. 4 hours, 41 minutes against Sinner. It was a real marathon battle in very, very humid conditions. It's still getting up to towards 30 degrees at sort of 9-10 o'clock at night. So it's still tough conditions to play in, even in the night match. So I think that's what that line is all about. I think the layers are assuming that Alcaraz, because he played only 2 hours, a pretty straightforward match for him against Arnaldo. I think that's perhaps where the layers are going with this. But if Zverev has the energy, the statistics on hard courts this hard court summer are very, very close. Let's take a look at what they've both done. Alcaraz 10-2 win-loss so far this hard court summer. And his serve point won and return points won total is 107, which is decent, but not mind blowing by any means. And Zverev, almost the same, 9-2 win-loss, and his total is 106. So just 1 point difference. Now, if you look at the service hold and break totals, it's actually Zverev that's slightly ahead. Alcaraz's total, Zverev's total 111. So if you're going just on the raw stats of what they've done this hardcourt summer, you would certainly give Zverev a chance. And this is kind of what this outright bet was about. I obviously wasn't hoping that Zverev was going to come into this match having played, almost 5 hours a couple of days prior. But he does have a clear day off. It's not like he's got to come back and play the very next day. It all depends on how Zverev is going to hold up physically. I think the first set against Sinner last night and throughout the match, really, Zverev was playing some of the best tennis I've seen him play for a very, very long time. And that's kind of what I was hoping he was going to do at the start of this tournament. Just come in and find that form, find that momentum that he built up a little bit over the lead-up matches. So, if he's going to hold up physically, I think he's got a decent chance. I think it's difficult to be wildly confident against Alcaraz, who will have the physical advantage. But on the raw, I think Zverev's got some sort of a chance. It just depends whether he can produce it.
I'd give him a chance. I really do. I would have bet him if he won in straight sets or he won in 3-1, and then not so long match. I'd actually bet him on the money line. But I do have a question mark about that. But I think the 5.5 is cheap. I like Zverev plus 5.5. The way he's serving plus 104, and I like the games. I think Zverev takes a set off him at minimum. I do. I think this is going to be a lot. I think we've got a chance here, Sean.
I think you've got a chance. It's just a hard one to bet, not knowing how he's going to show up. It wouldn't. He could be forgiven for being a bit leggy, couldn't he? That's the problem.
It will be the late game. Then when it be the evening match, so that helps us. I can't see them putting this up and put Medvedev and Rublev on the late game. So Alcaraz the night game on our fresh that will help us.
It should be, yeah. It should be again extra time to recover. Yes, possibly. I mean, I say it's difficult to be confident with a guy that's played almost 5 hours in the previous round, but. Yeah, on the stats, on the match, he has. The game has caused problems for Alcaraz before. We know that. That was part of the thinking at the start. I was obviously hoping he was going to come through here a little bit fresher, but that's not to be. But I think he's got a reasonable chance. Just depends if he's fit.
If you look at their last 10 match form, it's virtually identical. 8-2. They both got beat by Djokovic in Cincinnati.
Said,
they both got beat by Djokovic in Cincinnati. They've both obviously come through here to the quarterfinals, and they both got beaten relatively early in Toronto as well. I think we've got a chance here. I do. I'm not going to say we're going to win, but I do think 5.5 Zverev is worth taking, and I think 36.5 would actually be carrying my money, or over 3.5 sets. I think we get a set off him. But we'll see. Let's hope. I mean, we've got a lot on it anyway, so we don't really have to go in again. But if you've got a position on Zverev, you've got 40-1. You're 2 matches away from cashing a 20-1 ticket. So there's no really point to doing it. But if you're watching him play, and you think that Zverev does look fit, that's the time to play. And obviously, with the offer that Bet Rivers have as well, we're getting the 50% match payout to $25 on a live wager in play. That's the way to go. Sean is still out there in New York, and obviously if you can follow him on his journey, which is on our Instagram account, @BecauseWeWin, and also on our Twitter account, to be giving you some updates before he flies off this evening. Probably give you a little bit of a brief talk about that match as well a little bit later on the Twitter account. The final match, the All-Russian Affair, it's on Wednesday. We don't know the order of play yet, but I'm guessing this will be the afternoon, right in the middle of the heat. And that's up against Daniil Medvedev against Andrey Rublev, 2 very good friends off the court. Obviously, Rublev is Daniil Medvedev's son's godfather. Medvedev is the favourite here, minus 275. Rublev is plus 220. The spread here is 4.5. Medvedev is a favourite he's not actually, he's the underdog, minus 106. Rublev is the favourite. Getting the start of 4.5, minus 117. The total here is a lot higher than the last match. It's 39.5. That's why I don't agree with it. Minus 110 for over, minus 112 for under. Rublev has a quite horrid record in quarterfinals at majors. I think he's 0-7, isn't he? In the quarterfinal, I think he is. I read
near 8 now.
Near 8 now. And he's up against the guy who's beaten him twice in the quarterfinal. Medvedev beat him in the 2021 Australian Open in straight sets, and he beat him here at Flushing Meadow in 2020, also in straight sets. Rublev trails the head-to-head 6-2 as well. this is going to be a tough one for Rublev. I didn't think he played that well against Jack Draper. I thought Jack Draper's game plan was terrible yesterday. I thought Jack Draper could have done a lot better than what he did. I thought Rublev had given opportunities in set 3, couldn't take them. But I've been really impressed with Medvedev, just quietly going under the radar. We know how good a sort of run he had in the early part of the hard court season after Wimbledon, and I think Medvedev is underrated. Not for this match, but I think he's underrated in the winner market as well. What's your thoughts on this one?
I think it's difficult for Medvedev the way that the draw panned out. You know, if we're saying that Alcaraz is likely to be in the semi-finals, I just can't see Medvedev beating Alcaraz. The matchup is such a poor one for Medvedev. I was happy to take Medvedev on against de Minaur, and I was pretty happy once de Minaur won the first set. Won it pretty easily. De Minaur was favourite for that match, but I think his legs went in the end, de Minaur, which is kind of surprising and disappointing, really. But from Medvedev's point of view, to come back from that set, a poor set, and he was struggling physically as well against de Minaur, to then come back and win as convincingly as he did was probably the best thing he's done this hard court summer. I didn't think he was in any sort of decent form. It's certainly not his best form until last night, until the last couple of sets last night, really. Again, the humidity might have been a problem. I think he had a breathing issue, didn't he? So again, we're talking about the conditions, aren't we? We don't know when this is going to be played. We don't know whether the roof's going to be open, whether the roof's going to be closed. In theory, the roof should be open, but in theory, it should have been open yesterday, and it wasn't. So if it's going to be sort of hot and humid, that could sort of play a part. Just looking at the head-to-head here, as he said, 6-2 to Medvedev. Again, a very dominant head-to-head, similar to the Fritz Djokovic one in terms of service points won and return points won totals. Medvedev 108 to 92 for Rublev. So a dominant head-to-head pretty much for Medvedev. As we say, Rublev, I think he's 0-8. He's not either 0-7 or 0-8. Maybe I didn't read that right, but he certainly hasn't won a major quarterfinal so far, Rublev. Again, this has a feel of a sort of 3-1 to it to me. I could see Rublev taking a set. I watched obviously all of his match, Draper Rublev in the Armstrong court yesterday. I think Draper didn't really give himself much of a chance in the first 2 sets. His first serve percentage was way too low. It was 50%, I think, the first sets, but he was winning pretty much all those first serve points. If he'd served at about 62%, something like that, Draper, he could easily have been looking at a 2 sets to love lead. But once again, with Draper, the physical element took its toll, didn't it? He looked absolutely dead at the end, Draper. He had very little left for that final set. We know that about Draper. It's not new news, really. In terms of Medvedev, I still think he's relying too much on that first serve. You know, even in the sets that he was dominant against de Minaur, that's sets 2, 3, and 4 yesterday, he still didn't win over 50% of his second serve points, even though he won those sets convincingly. Second serve's not... It's a good indicator of how well you're playing from the baseline. I still don't think he's on top form, Medvedev, relying too much on that first serve. But on the other side of the coin, I don't think Rublev has the belief mentally to beat a player like Medvedev in a major quarterfinal. He certainly has shown so far that he doesn't have that belief in these major quarterfinals. I can see him winning a set. I can't see this being a straightforward win for Medvedev. I think he'll win it. I think Rublev will take a set. So again, similar thinking. Medvedev to win it 3-1, 3.6 chance that is with Bet Rivers.
Yep, currently available at 2.6 on the American odds. Medvedev to win 3-1. So they are our official 2 picks. We're going to go for 2 picks here, Sean, on the quarterfinals. We're just going to
3 ones. Yeah, I think I've gone for the slightly higher odds because, you know, I just think it's very difficult with some of these matches with the heat. You could get some quite peculiar scorelines, some unusual set scorelines. Players maybe just kind of semi-tanking a set if they go breakdown and just thinking, well, I've got to play another 3 sets in this heat.
Yeah,
it does make it very, very difficult. And I've gone for slightly smaller stakes, bigger prices on 2 outcomes that I think are quite likely.
So that's a 3-1 win to Frances Tiafoe in the All-American Clash, which will be a blockbuster this evening against Ben Shelton, starting at 8:15 p.m. Eastern Time. And we don't know the scheduling yet, but we expect Daniil Medvedev and Andrey Rublev to be the early start, the afternoon match. And we're going to go for 3-1 there on Medvedev to beat his his good friends and his godfather, his child, and he's going to expect him to get the job done there 3-1 as well. Remember, there's 4 ways to follow us on Betting Weekly Game Bet Match. Download the podcast Betting Weekly Game Bet Match on your preferred podcast provider. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Betting Weekly Studios. We have all fantastic action on there. It's international break in the football this week, so we're waiting to see what happens on the international break. They've got some shows coming up with all the international fixtures on the European qualification. You hear will be a whole host of that. The Premier League will return not this week, next week. So it's all international at the moment. And also you can follow us on our Instagram and our Twitter account at Because We Win. You can follow Sean's adventures on his final day in New York. And you can look at the stuff that we've already done and over the last couple of week or so over in the Big Apple. Sean, have a very, very safe journey, my friend. Get some sleep on the plane, and I'll speak to you when you get back. And hopefully we can get our man, Zverev, Alexander Zverev, through to the semi-finals and confidence boosting with the win over Alcaraz. That's what we need. That will cheer us up. And then we got a great chance of landing a big 41 cash. Anyway, safe journey. Enjoy your final day in New York. Have a good time. And thanks for all the content you've done so far. And good luck with your bets. And we'll speak to everyone again very soon. Take care.